welcome to our first second take of a fantasy happy hour episode. I kind of fucked up the recording last one, so we're just going to quickly redo this. Um, but yeah, we got week 11, exciting one. Week 10 was big bust for myself. Not really sure about Terry Licious over here.
Oh,
Um,
bust.
yeah, so I'm just going to jump right into it. We got pretty exciting week 11 coming up here. Way different than, as Tarin would say, than last week's. But jumping into my QB pick, I'm going Tua Tagovailoa. Voila. I know I'm not saying it right. I listened to TSN the one day and they spent an hour trying to figure it out. But Miami, they're going on a 3-game win streak here. I think he got about 20-some fantasy points last week. Not a lot, but 2 TDs, 169 yards. I'm just kind of rolling with the wagon if they're going to be hopefully getting another win going on this week. And, if he gets up, he's a cheaper pick too in terms of quarterback. So if he gets us another, 20 to 30, hopefully on the higher end of fantasy points, it'll be worth it with my stack. Tarin, what are you looking at for QBs this week?
Well, this week's kind of funny because we don't have a single total over 50.5. And 2 weeks ago, we had 6 games over 53. So there's no quarterback right away that's jumping. It's not like I'm going to go to Russ this week or I'm going to go to Kyler Murray or Mahomes there because none of them are on this slate. So I jumped down to a cheap guy at 5,500, and Joe Burrow, who's going up against the Washington football team. He just passes the ball a lot. And when you have volume, you have a chance at a big game. He's thrown about 38 attempts per game on average. I think he had a game with 61 attempts, so that's just crazy. He's rushed the ball in 3 times. I don't expect that to happen very often. It'll be a much better matchup this week than he had last week where he got killed by Pittsburgh. And then hopefully better weather. They've been getting a couple, last week's weather was pretty rough there in Pittsburgh. And then I would stack them with T. Higgins or Tyler Boyd. Both seem really good, and they both play out of the slot, both catching quite a bit because of his passing volume. I like T. Higgins at a cheaper price, but Boyd's definitely just as valuable. And then I'm going to jump over to running back, and this is where I went a little cheaper. I went to a team I don't like, but I like the volume that they're running the ball, which is the New England Patriots and Damian Harris. They get Houston this week, who got beat for 100 yards twice last week by 2 running backs in the same game, in Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. So going back to Damian Harris, the real risk with Damian Harris is that you have Cam Newton, you have Rex Burkhead seeming to get involved in the red zone. So you have 3 kind of guys that are going to steal the ball possibly when it comes to getting touchdowns. But he has rushed for over 102 of his last 3. And Houston gives up no kind of defense to this. So, and it looks like the Patriots are now leaning on the run game more and kind of running read options with Cam a lot. So I'll pass it back to you for your running back. Are you going high priced, low priced?
Well, I'm thinking the same thing as you in the same sense of Houston Texans. I'm going either or of Kareem Hunt or Chubb. As we saw last week, it was pretty embarrassing as a Texans fan because, I'm at this point where I'm cheering for the best sports team who puts up mediocre results every year in every sport I like. That's right, the best sports team, Houston Texans, Maple Leafs. Let's go. But they're playing Philly this week. Both had over 20 fantasy points last week. So I think either or you're probably going to be safe picking. If I'm leaning, I'm probably going to lean to Kareem Hunt. But that's just my personal preference. If I swing it back over to some wide receiver here, I'm going off of my QB pick, and I got a cheaper pick for my wide receiver of the week in Jakeem Grant, 4 for 5, I believe, last week in targets and a TD. As I was saying before when we did take one here, you never know with these newer QBs who they're going to have the chemistry with, and as we saw last week, he was 3K last week. I believe he's 3,500 this week, if I'm correct. So I think it's a safe pick in terms of having a receiver out there for a cheap price, and allows you to pick up some of the more expensive guys that you're going to want to have almost every week in most of your lineups. But yeah, who are you thinking for wide receiver there?
I jumped to Pittsburgh actually here, and I had a hard time picking between the 3 of them. They're all 3 of the wide receivers there with Big Ben are getting volume. But my favorite, because of the usage, is Deontay Johnson. He has the highest usage of the 3. He tends to be 10 or more targets, I think, in 3 of his last 4. One of those games, I think he had 15. he's just getting targeted a ton, and he's getting used in the red zone. So he put up a touchdown over 100 last week. And actually Claypool had, I think, 2 touchdowns, and Juju had a touchdown. So, I mean, my second favorite quarterback this week is Big Ben in that matchup, because they do get Jacksonville, who's putting up really no defense as well. I think my common theme here is that I'm playing against bad defenses, and usually that's a good decision. It's a safe decision, but it's a good decision. I'm trying to go safe this week. Last week took too many risks, and it kind of ran away from me. But the one thing to note on your Jakeem Grant pick, I was just going to add, Preston Williams is out for the Dolphins, and they traded Isaiah Ford. So really, like, Jakeem Grant has became the number 2 receiver there, and DraftKings didn't price him up. So it's kind of shocking in that sense. But jumping over to the tight end position, which has been a dumpster this year. Like, if Kelsey's not on the slate, you don't have anybody to rely on. Kelsey's the only guy putting up like 20-point fantasy outings every time. And I know you're using the guy that I used in the first take as well, but I'm going to jump over and take Hayden Hurst for the Falcons. They get New Orleans this week. He is the safety valve tight end if you ever had one. And if you've seen like the winning lineups the last, I think, 4 or 5 weeks, if it wasn't Kelsey, it was a guy that put up 14 points. And that's just what Hayden Hurst does for you. And that's really all you want out of a tight end this year in DFS. It just hasn't been a high-scoring position. There's been a few spotty one-off games. But outside of that, it hasn't been great at tight end. So take a guy that you know is going to get you 10 to 14 points and just keep it there. That's free. And so I'll pass it to you for your Logan Thomas tight end advice that we had a mimic on in our first take.
Yeah, I'm going, as you just mentioned, there's been a couple guys who've had good breakout weeks with the tight end position, but right now you're going 10 to 14 points. You're paying around $4,000 for that position. So this week I'm going with Logan Thomas versus the Bengals. Still got a 10 and I think 10.5 fantasy points last week. 4 for 6 on catches, no TDs even. So, I mean, they're all relatively playing the same. You're kind of banking that you get lucky one week and your guy gets 20, 25 points and you'd be laughing. Swinging it over to some defense special teams. I'm going back to my favorite team, and I'm going to I'm going to the Patriots who are playing Houston.
There you go.
I mean, I don't know if it's a good pick. I think Watson will get sacked a couple of times. I don't think Houston will put up more than 20 points. That'll be generous probably. And I'm hoping for, a couple maybe defensive fumble recoveries or even a pick 6, which probably will probably most likely not happen, but if it works, it works. I mean, again, with this position, if I still stick around 10 points, I'll be happy. But I'm really banking around getting the cheap receiver option to stat and a cheaper running back option to get some of those more star-studded fantasy players. So what are you thinking for defense special teams this week?
I'm going to the guy that punt returns that you already mentioned, Jakeem Grant's defense there in the Miami Dolphins. They get Denver this week, and Locke put up, I think, 4 picks, 3 fumbles, and 16 points to the Raiders last week, who are not known to have a great defense. And Locke's going to test it out, is the wording that the coach said. He's injured and going to try to play, which is just an automatic target for me at that price. 3,400 in the Dolphins. If you're looking to stack Jakeem Grant by himself, you could also put the Dolphins in and hope he returns a punt. That is an option with him, and you get that bonus 6 points. One bonus thing I was going to mention, there is a game on this slate, and I have a bit of a bias to it, but I've started to look more at it, and that's Dallas versus the Vikings. And I think this has potential to be the shootout of the week. Both offenses are potent, both defenses suck, and Andy Dalton's back. So you do have a bit more passing offense there for Dallas. So I like going with like the cheaper Amari Cooper, who was really good when Dalton was there, and going to Jefferson, and going to Dalvin Cook. I think Dalvin Cook's like a lock in most of your games. This game could kind of shoot out more than we expect any of the other ones to at this point. So just watch that game, and the pieces are pretty cheap outside of Dalvin Cook, of course.
If you're expecting it to shoot out, are you still going to really bank on Dalvin Cook then? Or are you expecting Thielen and Jefferson to take the majority of the points then?
I'm dabbling in Jefferson a little bit. Like I'm going to have him in 1 of 4 lineups, I think, but Dalvin I'm having in 3 of 4. So the key to the Vikings offense to watch is that even if they throw to Jefferson or Kirk Cousins throws 20 times, Dalvin Cook has rushed 30 or more times in the 3 of his last 4. So they're going to run the ball at a high clip regardless. And in that game against the Bears last week, he wasn't efficient at all. They still gave him the ball 30 times. Like their run game had no real momentum going, and they still kept giving him the ball. So that's just one thing about that offense. And now you get Dallas in a game that could be a shootout. That could mean 3 touchdowns for Dalvin Cook again. I've locked him into 3 of 4. Try the fade in one lineup because I know he'll be high owned, but he's just a guy that I don't want to fade anymore.
Perfect. Great analysis. Well, if you like this, give it a like or give us a comment on who you're thinking. If you have any insider news that we haven't heard, do look for updates. Tarin's pretty good about commenting and letting you guys know what's going on throughout the week here. And then if you're really liking this, subscribe. Thanks to everyone who's been watching the Thursday night ones. If you're watching this one, you're a real fan. If you're watching the Monday, you're a real fan. But yeah, thanks. Have a good one.